Hello, and welcome to your Chapter 2 video lecture. Today we are going to finish up the Chapter 2. We are going to finish up with corporate image, and then we are going to go into brands and branding, and then we're going to finish up with labels and packaging. Lots and lots of really good information in this chapter, so I hope you watch it. You will be responsible for the information in this chapter in the test, and also you can use a lot of this information in the chapter for your creatives and as you do your creatives for your company. So I'm going to move through it fairly quickly because I don't want you guys to have to watch a video lecture that's an hour long or what have you. So please take notes, please watch the video lecture, and I look forward to seeing you on Monday. So continuing on with corporate image. Companies continuously and constantly evaluate and reevaluate their corporate image by asking customers, by asking non-customers to see how they're trending on social media and things like that. Because obviously, corporate image can be a very strategic advantage, or your corporate image could be the death of a product or actually the death of a company. So as companies continue to evaluate, they're asking themselves, is this a strategic advantage? Is my corporate image where I want it to be? Do I have to do something about it? So if you think about it, for instance, Porsche. Porsche has an excellent corporate image. You think of fast sports cars, high-end sports cars, etc. Subaru also has an excellent corporate image. When you think of Subaru, you think of vehicles for those that are outdoorsmen. So it really is a strategic advantage. However, sometimes an image can get stale. An image can be portrayed something that you want it to be portrayed or not want it to be portrayed, etc. And in that case, an organization must rejuvenate their image to send lifeblood into their image. The best example I can think of that is Lego. Lego became stale, almost went out of business. They were thought of only as children's blocks, plastic blocks that were actually dangerous for kids because they would swallow them, etc. So Lego needed to rejuvenate their image, and they did that through Lego movies. They also did it through Lego Star Wars and partnering with iconic movies, Batman, Star Wars, Marvel, etc. And now actually Legos has been rejuvenated in the fact that more adults are using it, more children are using it, because they really rejuvenated their image. They attracted new customers, they sold new products, they partnered with movies, they remained consistent with what they did, which was building blocks and putting blocks together, but they rejuvenated and put a lot of lifeblood into that particular image, and it worked out very well. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of creativity. And I really, my hat goes off to Lego because they've done a great job of really rejuvenating that issue. So successful ways of rejuvenating an image, helping former customers rediscover the brand again. Those that used to play with Legos rediscovered it by partnering with iconic types of movies and figures out there. They offer value, they offer a strong product, etc. And they actually built a brand community. There are conventions now with Legos and people building Legos and building the Death Star from what's the name of that movie? Oh, Star Wars, etc. So sometimes you can't rejuvenate an image. Sometimes you absolutely have to change an image. That is an iconic logo down there of Buick, and Buick did a great job of changing their image. Everybody thought of Buick as an old man's car, and actually it was an old man's car. Their target market, or their market, was older boomers, greatest generation. People used to say, my old man's Buick, my old man's Buick. Buick was synonymous with my old man's Buick. Well, their their target audience or their target customers were actually dying out, literally. They were getting old, they weren't buying cars anymore, and they were actually leaving this planet, unfortunately. So Buick needed to change their image. And if you think about it, they came out with, it's not your old man's Buick, it's not your father's Buick. And now Buick, when you look at their ads on TV, when you look at their creatives, it's all about millennials driving these sporty, sleek looking cars. Their their creatives are all about, well, I didn't know that that was a Buick, or that's not a Buick, because everybody thought of Buick as an old man's car, and now it's a sleek car for the millennial generation and the young Xers. So Buick did a great job of actually changing their image and making their image from an old man's car to a younger person's car. If you think about the two cases that are coming up this week, and probably none of you guys will watch this before the cases are due, but 8 o'clock coffee is all about rejuvenating their image because it's an old man's brand. And Barbie is all about changing their image. So the two cases that we're going to do this week, Barbie and 8 o'clock coffee, is all about changing or rejuvenating their image. So part of the image is corporate names. The name of your company says a lot about your company. There's really 4 different styles or different types of names. You've got overt names, you've got implied names, you've got conceptual names, and you've got iconoclastic names. Overt names are what the company's does. American Airlines, waste management. Obviously, in the name, it tells you, what do we do? We're an airline company. We're a waste management company. So those types of corporate names are very, very overt, right in your face, tells you this is what we do up front so that there's no doubt. Then you've got implied names, which has recognizable words that imply to what they do. For instance, Under Armour. Under Armour implies that, hey, you wear the clothes under your outer clothes in order to keep you warm. And Under Armour, if you think about Under Armour, now they're into all types of sporting type of outfits and sporting apparel, but they started as long johns, really long underwear. And they got the NFL contract where the NFL players would wear Under Armour under their uniforms to keep them warm in places like Cleveland and Buffalo and Chicago when it was very cold outside. And so their name, Under Armour, is really recognizable as to kind of what they do. They then branched out from just underclothes or long johns, as I would say them, to other types of sporting apparel. But their mainstay is still, you wear Under Armour under your clothes for hunting, for skiing, for those types of things to keep you warm. Conceptual names are what the company offers. Lori's Wholesale Food, or not wholesale, but Wholeful Foods, I think, whatever it's called. Palmer's Meat Market. It's what the company offers. Dunkin' Donuts actually changed their name because they're going beyond just the donut. They didn't want to be known as a donut shop. So they changed their name and they dropped donuts, and now they're just Dunkin' because they want to be more of a coffee shop. And then, of course, iconoclastic names are different, unique type of memorable names. Spotify, Pandora, Xerox, Yamaha, those types of names are what we would call iconoclastic names. Here's some kind of cool stuff. Google's name started as a joke with a 1 followed by 100 zeros. Lego was, which means play well. Reebok was named after an antelope, if you can think about it. Skype, Sky peer-to-peer. So they dropped the Sky peer-to-peer and just called it Skype. Verizon. The one that really gets me is Volkswagen, because it was created by Adolf Hitler. And as we know, Adolf Hitler was a monster. just one of the worst of human rights violations in the history of the world, going all the way back to Genghis Khan, if you can think about it. I'm surprised Volkswagen kept that name because it was created by Adolf Hitler. I don't think a lot of people know that, um, but because Adolf Hitler was such a monster, I'm really surprised that Volkswagen created or they kept that name. And then, of course, you got Yahoo there too. So logos and corporate names should be very easily recognizable, should be very familiar, it should be consensual, provoke positive feedback or feelings. So if you think you've got corporate names and you've got logos, and those two go together, so that even when you can't see the name, if you see the logo, it's recognizable as to what it is, etc. So logos, again, recall specific brands. When you can't read the name, if you see the logo, you want to be able to recall the brand and the company and the image of the company. It reduces search time, etc. The best example of a phenomenal corporate logo that I can think of is McDonald's. McDonald's obviously targets a lot of young kids, especially very young kids, for their chicken McNuggets and the things like that. And a little kid can recognize the golden arches before that child can read. And that is what McDonald's wants. It's a family type of restaurant, family type of fast food restaurant. They want to continue to be a family type of fast food restaurant. And to have a child, a little kid, recognize the golden arches before they can even read and want to go to McDonald's and tell their parents, I want to go to McDonald's, not because they can read the McDonald's, but they can see the golden arches, is exactly what you're looking for in a logo. Look at Mercedes-Benz, it's a star. And that's exactly the corporate image that Mercedes-Benz wants to portray. They want to portray the fact that we are a luxury, we are the highest quality luxury out there, we are a star. And so if you look at different, look at AT&T. AT&T is all about broadband and all about data movement throughout the world. So their iconic logo is the world. It's that blue world that's got almost like a ribbon wrapped around it. And that's what they do. So these are all corporate iconic logos of what corporations do and why they do it. And it fits very nicely into what they're doing. So colors are also very important in the logo. I'm going to let you read this. Colors are also very important when you do your creatives. Those of you that saw the creative that I did the other day with my son being focused on that for teen empowerment, I used blue as a border, and I also used blue for the text. I had white text in a blue block because blue is authority, it's trust, it's stability. And if you think about teens, they have to trust somebody. They want an authoritarian figure. So I used blue prominently in that logo, or excuse me, in that creative. And I actually even bordered the creative with blue because of the authority and the dignity that blue brings back. As you guys do your creatives for your case studies, as you do your creatives for your company and for your client, you need to take a look at these types of colors, and then you should talk to your client about that. I use black because this is a very serious type of issue that we're dealing with. Or I used green because it's fresh, it's health, it's earthy. So these are your colors. These are some more colors with pink and purple. I would stay away from purple. I tell all of my clients, stay away from purple. Purple to me is very spiritual, very religious. If you think about the Catholic Church, if you think about the Protestant Church, especially during Lent, it is very, very purple. During the Lenten season, almost towards the rebirth of Christ. And sometimes you don't want to mix religion with your company. So I've always said stay away from purple. But, you know, It's up to you, and it's up to you in the way you want to do your creatives. So now let's turn our attention to brands and branding. There's really three types of brands. There's a family brand, a brand extension, and a flanker brand. Family brands are those brands. You have one brand with a lot of different products, different flavors, different colors, or what have you underneath it. For instance, the best example I can think of is Campbell's soup. You have Campbell's bean with bacon, which is one of my favorites. Campbell's tomato, which I love. Campbell's chicken noodle, etc., etc. So all they have to do is advertise or do creatives on Campbell's soup, and then they have all the different products underneath it. It really helps with advertising, and it helps with what am I trying to say? I'm having trouble with my words this morning, but it helps with advertising and efficiencies of advertising. Then you've got brand extension. Brand extension is when you take a brand and then you extend products from that brand, a new good or a new service. The best example I could think of with a brand extension would be Black & Decker. Black & Decker at one point in time absolutely owned the the power tool market with Black & Decker drills and saws and that type of thing. They extended their brand and went into the kitchen appliance for coffee makers and things like that, and were extremely successful. So it was a very successful way of extending their brand. And then P&G is the best when it comes to flanker brand. You don't hear about P&G's Cheer or P&G's Tide. You hear about Tide or Cheer. So they have multiple brands, or the product actually is the brand. They have Cheer, they have Tide, they have Downy, and the P&G, which is the overall arching umbrella brand, is never named. So they can bring out new brands. So their product is actually their brand, and that's what we call a flanker brand. Co-branding, you could do ingredient branding, and that would be Ben & Jerry's and Hershey's chocolate, Philadelphia cream cheese, and Cadbury chocolate is a good one. Oftentimes ingredient branding is in the food or the beverage industry. Splenda, which is an artificial sweetener with Coke, etc. Then you've got cooperative branding, where two people cooperate to brand together. The best example I could think of is Microsoft and Intel. Intel Inside. After the end of the Microsoft commercial, you see Intel. The same thing with HP. You'll see an HP computer, and then at the end you'll see Intel Inside, and that's cooperative branding. And then complementary branding is one brand complements the other. The best example I could think of is chips and salsa. Tostitos brand salsa along with Tostitos brand chips. The two brands complement each other. Also, you can do it with different brands. Ritz crackers and Jif peanut butter. They complement each other. Oftentimes you see them together. You see them very close on store shelves, etc. That's called complementary branding. So building powerful brands, just ask Nike. If anybody wants to know how to build a powerful brand, ask Nike. And what they did is exactly that first bullet there. They invested in the brand. They created awareness, not in the product, of the brand. They offered uniqueness. Just do it. Get out there. Just do it. They built trust amongst athletes and people that wanted to become athletes. They delivered an experience. When you're wearing Nike, you're thinking about exercise, you're thinking about fitness, you're thinking about getting out there and just doing it. All of those things is what Nike did over the past 32 years, and they have been wildly successful. So if you think about building a powerful brand, you got to look at Nike, because they were the best in the world at doing it. Brand loyalty is the ultimate objective of a brand. What they're trying to do is they're trying to maintain brand loyalty, understand brand loyalty, so that people will think of that brand. And when we talk about in the next chapter, which thankfully we're not going to do on a video lecture. But the next chapter, as we think about buyer behavior, we're going to talk about evoke set. And that is the ultimate goal of a brand loyal or brand objective. The best example I can think of brand loyalty is my mother. My mother used to buy Jif peanut butter, always. And when they were out of Jif peanut butter, she wouldn't buy peanut butter. And one time I asked her, why do you always buy Jif? And she says, I don't know. I just always have. That's brand loyalty. Sometimes with brand loyalty, you don't know why you buy the brand. It's just you always have. And if a marketer can get that, they have won. That is the way to go. So benefits of brand equity, we know all about that. You can charge higher prices. Your advertising goes a lot farther. You get the word of mouth. You've got channel power. In other words, you have control over the retailers. If you have the #1 brand, the retailers are going to want to carry your brand, and you're able to actually dictate what the retailers do or punish them by not allowing them to carry your brand. So lots and lots of good things coming off of brand equity, and that's why people are driving brand equity as far and as fast as they possibly can. Now let's turn our attention to private labels or private brands. I've never actually heard it called private brand. The book Clow and Back talks about the private brands. I call it private label. The most popular private label that you will know, that we will know in this region, and that's Wegmans private label. Lots of different fluctuations within private brands, private labels, etc. But oftentimes private labels and private brands compete very, very well with manufacturer's brand. Let me give you an example. Wegmans macaroni and cheese competes very, very well with Kraft macaroni and cheese. As a matter of fact, my daughter, who's 10, will not even eat Kraft macaroni and cheese. She has to have Wegmans brand. So historically, it was for price-sensitive customers. Anymore, though, it's not. Anymore, private labels or private brands are becoming more and more sought after versus the manufacturer's brand. Just about every store, Target has their own brand, Tops has their own brand, Walmart has their own brand. Sometimes the brand is named after the store, like Wegmans. Sometimes the brand is named something different, like in the case of Walmart, their private label is called Great Value. Retailers also sometimes level their private labels. For instance, Wegmans has their traditional Wegmans, and then they also have their Italian Classic. Italian Classics are a step above the Wegmans brand. So if you think about spaghetti, you can buy Wegmans spaghetti, or you can buy the Italian Classic spaghetti, or you can buy manufacturer's brand spaghetti like Berea. So with regards to that, what Wegmans done is they have tiered their private labels. So private labels are improving quality. They're becoming more, not necessarily niche anymore, but more mainstream. And they are actually out there really competing well against what we would call manufacturers' brands. Wegmans has their own sodas, the W Pop, which competes against your manufacturer's brand, and oftentimes W Pop is competes very well. Now you also have what's called off brands, which are manufacturer's brands but not mainstream brands, and they tend to be cheaper. Oftentimes your off brands are as good quality as your others. Aldi's have made a damn fortune, has built an empire on off brands. If you go to Aldi's, they don't sell main street or mainline manufacturers brands. They sell what we call off brands, but those off brands compete very well in taste, in quality, and in serviceability, etc. So Aldi's have built an empire by selling off brands and not selling manufacturers' brands and not selling private labels. As a matter of fact, I don't think Aldi's even carries a private label. But Aldi's, many people shop at Aldi's because their off brands are high quality. So now let's turn our attention to packaging. Packaging is the final impression to make, or final opportunity to make impression. Oftentimes you see very creative packaging, especially when the product, there's a lot of product parity. You see tissues down there, Kleenex tissues, Kleenex versus Puffs. Can't really tell the difference myself. So what they'll try to do is grab attention through really creative packaging. You see that a lot with wines, with different bottles of wine, shapes of bottles of wine. You see it with Coca-Cola. Sometimes will come out with a different shape bottle in order to capture attention and things like that. On the right there, you see a soft drink that looks like a light bulb. Those types of things, trying to capture attention in the packaging. Marketers use packaging to create an impression. It needs to stand out, especially when there's a lot of product parity. And it tells kind of customers what's inside. So the primary purposes of packaging is to protect the product, but most of the time, and you can see it all there, communicate marketing message, prevent tampering, all those types of things. But it's also used as a strong marketing tool. Labels must meet legal requirements. The one that comes to mind is cigarettes. Getting more and more graphic with the cigarette label that says, you know, cigarettes will kill you. Don't smoke cigarettes. The other warning label that's very specific is alcohol. Women should not drink alcohol during pregnancy, operate heavy machinery with alcohol and those types of things. Labels must meet legal requirements, especially with the nutrition facts and that type of thing. But labels are also a way of capturing attention. If you look at a product that has a lot of product parity, or consumers have non-discerning tastes, wine comes to mind. They try to capture attention with very bright colored labels so that you can see them on the shelves, with creative things on their labels, kids, other things, not wine, but with other products. Just walk through a wine store sometime. You'll see that within the $7.99 to say $9.99 bottle of wine, you'll see a lot of different very colorful labels and very creative names for these wines, because oftentimes people have non-discerning tastes with wine, and whatever captures their attention, they're going to buy. Finally, the last concept we're going to talk about is QR codes. QR codes are used in packaging and labels. QR codes you can use for facts or information about it. Oftentimes, the QR codes, where you scan the QR codes, it takes you right to the website. A lot of our students in the past have used QR codes when you're doing posters. They've used QR codes when you're doing direct mail and those types of things, because it allows you to scan that QR code, get information by going right to the website or right to a shopping cart or something like that. So QR codes have kind of run its course. Most people don't have any QR code readers on their phone anymore. They've gotten rid of it because they want room for something else. But QR codes truly are a good idea because it doesn't take up much room. You can scan the QR code and go right to the website of whatever client you are working for. So that might be a nice tool that you could use on your creatives. With that being said, that is the end of this video lecture. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. And until then, I will see you on Monday.